Hi, everybody. My name is Judith. I've been sober for 47 years. I'm also in Overeaters Anonymous and in Al-Anon. And over the course of my life, I've done a lot of bits and pieces of many different programs. I've also done Buddhism, Zen particularly, although I do mix insight Vipassana and Tibetan Buddhism. And I've also done that the whole time that I've been in program. So all these ways are entangled in my spiritual life. And I'm very, very grateful for that entanglement because I get kind of different things from the different programs. Like from Zen, I have gotten a deep and profound depth to my understanding of the universe, of meditation, of who I am in relationship to the world. From 12 steps, I have gotten emotional support, a community which is, in my opinion, far surpasses the Zen community in terms of emotional support. And I've also, I think steps 4 through 9 are just a genius addition to spirituality. So that's a bit of an introduction. Some of you have already heard me talk, but maybe some of you haven't. So this is a great opportunity for me. I've said that many times. Usually at a program meeting, I don't mention Buddhism because it's not part of the traditions. And this is a place where I can really talk about my understanding of the steps through the lens of a Buddhist worldview. So it's been very integrating and exciting for me. And also it's I'm not teaching very much. I'm mostly writing books right now. So this is one of the only places I'm talking publicly. And that also is very fun because I'm tracking how I'm speaking about things, and things are changing how I speak about things because I'm changing, because I'm developing and maturing in my spiritual life even now, which I think is awesome. I never thought it was infinite. I never thought spiritual growth was infinite. I never thought the 12 steps never stopped being important to me. I never thought that. I thought you got through and I'm going to do a hand gesture. You're done. And then life is great. Or you're a saint. Now I realize that was very, very immature thinking. And gratefully that mythology that if I do the 12 steps perfectly, I will become a perfect person. I won't have any more suffering and I will be a saint. Thankfully, that mythology has been broken apart in my life. And now I realize, what do they say? Based on the spirituality of this day. And that's the key. It's not futuring. It's not about the past. It's how are you leading your life? Are you in alignment with your values in this day? Now I say that, and it's not so easy to get there, right? Because we're often consumed with the past, and we're often afraid or projecting things in the future. And it's very, very hard to come back to what is happening right now. My experience, however, is that that's part of the promises of the program. And that happens after step 8 and 9, where your relationship with your past has calmed down. It doesn't trigger you as much. I can still say I get triggered by my past, but not as much. And even my husband will say, wow, you handled that really differently. Or that only took a couple of hours, or that only took a couple of days. So I still have to deal with the karma of my past, but because I very vigorously work the steps, it's much less intense. It doesn't happen as often. There are three things that people say about it, but can't remember. So today we're going to work on step 8. Now, I really enjoyed working with step 6 and 7 because I really was at the edge of what I know about, which is non-doing or effortlessness. Particularly step 7 is a receptive. You receive the energy of the universe in order to grow or to change your habit patterns. So there is a rhythm of doing and non-doing in the steps. And step 8 and 9 are starting to go back into doing. There are things you need to do, and it's your effort. You have to effort a little bit to do. And as I was preparing, I realized I kind of put 8 and 9 together. It's hard for me to separate them. But then I just thought, well, what comes out today comes out. And next time I'm here, we'll just repeat or do it in a slightly different way. So that's where I'm at. So now I'm going to put up my, let's see, my screen share, if I've got it. Ah, it worked. Yay. Okay. So we're going to work on step 8 today. And step 8 is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And I have often used the second little note here for many decades, and I thought it was original to me. And in order to do this talk, I read in the AA 12 and 12, and that sentence was actually in it. So now I see where I got it, which is how do I put my relationships in the best possible order? And the reason I changed that is very similar to this perfectionism. I used to feel that if I did everything right, everyone would love me, I would be a saint, I wouldn't have any suffering. Now, the amends really breaks that up for you because often you don't get the result that you had been hoping for, especially if you're an Al-Anon person and you're a people pleaser. Very hard to do step 8. One of the reasons it's very, very important to do step 8 with a sponsor or an AA fellowship person, not just AA, any 12-step fellowship person, because it can be very misinterpreted and you can do it in a more harmful way. For example, one example is the first time I did step 8, I just went around and apologized to everyone I knew for being alive, for being who I was. Well, some ways that was good. Everybody knew that I was working on myself. They knew I had gotten into a program about all my many, many difficulties. So in a sense, that was good. It was like a heads up, everybody, I'm doing something. And on the other hand, it wasn't about amends at all. That was just a victimy, people-pleasing thing that I did to apologize about my life. So that's not exactly what we're talking about here. The amends need to be quite specific. They need to be well thought out. They should be, I don't like to use the word should. I would encourage people, as I said before, to do this with someone else, a sponsor, a fellowship person, a therapist, someone who knows the steps, because this is a very critical step, in my opinion. It is also the step that I feel Buddhism doesn't have. I've really looked hard through all the different Buddhism. I did find, as I've already mentioned, how to interrupt your karma. So that was really about this. But I didn't find, and if you know, please email me, where it talks about direct amends, where it talks about making restitution in the manifest world, very specifically and very literally. I haven't found that in Buddhism. It's really important that we free ourselves from the past by doing this very specific step. Okay. This is the beginning of the first paragraph in the AA 12 and 12, and I thought it would be a great place to start. So you look backward and you try to discover where we have been at fault, making an accurate and unsparing survey of the human wreckage I have left in my wake. I love that, the human wreckage I have left in my wake. So I did leave a lot of pain. When I looked behind me, there were people in the ditch. I'm laughing now. It's not so funny when you realize it. And this is another thing about this step is how do you be accurate and unsparing, but still have compassion for yourself? Still be coming from the field of love rather than the field of anger or fear or self-hate. So before you do the amends, it's very important that you've purified yourself from self-hate, that you've forgiven yourself because you understand karma, you understand the conditions that cause your insanity, if you want to use a second step word. For me, that's what helps me understand that I can forgive myself. Causes and conditions came together in my life that were very difficult. And the way I handled them was through drugs and alcohol and people pleasing and overeating. I had a lot of ways that I tried to survive. And the beauty and the wonder of coming into program is we have a chance to redevelop ourselves, to change how we're seeing our life, seeing ourselves, and seeing the world. And that's through a spiritual lens. And it takes decades, really, I would like to say. I hope that's not discouraging, but maybe it could be encouraging to be really, really patient with yourself. And I think the worst thing we can do is exaggerate self-hate. So don't do the amends unless you can do it with a really open heart towards yourself and also towards the people who have injured you. The people who have injured you also have causes and conditions that created them. The victim becomes the perpetrator, and then the perpetrator becomes the victim. And this is a very vicious cycle. And you can certainly see it in the world over and over, that victims become perpetrators and then perpetrators become victims. So this is the cycle we're trying to break. And we're trying to break it without blame, judgment, meanness. We're just acknowledging that this cycle exists and that we are interrupting the cycle. Made a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. So repair work, sometimes they call it, is very important if we're going to live in peace. Repair work is very important if I want to have and keep my relationships. I was a person that if something went wrong in the relationship, bye-bye, I'm out of here. Till that, just run away and leave. And I never knew how to have a dialogue with someone. Oh, I was, what do they call it? Conflict averse. I didn't know how to get through conflict with another human being at all. And I started to learn this when I started to make amends. It's really about relationships through difficulty, through conflict. And the best thing I've done for myself in this regard is learning nonviolent communication, which is a system of talking and dialogue, which has really helped me. It's given me the tools for me to be able to stay in a dialogue with someone with an open heart, without blaming, shaming, judging, and getting angry, trying to find common ground and a solution that helps both sides. And third is, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relationship with every human being we know. I'm laughing at that. That is a spiritual aspiration, is it not? This is a spiritual aspiration that my heart, that don't prejudge people, that I'm open to who they are in the present moment, that I understand dukkha, or the suffering that is part of human life, that I understand this swivel of victim, perpetrator, and because of all that, I can be in the present moment with a kind and open heart with every human being I know. Now, I can't do that. Can you? But it's an aspiration. And, I don't know very many people who can do that either. But I have heard, have you guys heard stories about the Dalai Lama? There are a lot of stories about the Dalai Lama that when you meet the Dalai Lama, he is right present with you. You feel that he loves you and that he's not judging you, and he wants to share love with you. That's a very highly evolved human being. And the amends are part of going towards that evolution in my spiritual life. Okay. Now, there's a lot of reasons we don't want to do it. There's a lot of reasons we don't want to do the fourth step. There's a lot of reasons we do not want to look at the wreckage in our wake, because it's very, very painful. And if we have been an addict or an overeater or an overworker or a people pleaser, all these ways to avoid conflict, to avoid pain, this idea of opening up emotional wounds from the past does not appeal to people who have been running away. But the experience in the 12-step world, and I would say in most spiritual practices, you cannot run away. You have to face the pain of your karma. You have to face what you've done. You have to face what's been done to you. You have to digest it in your body, mind, and heart, and then you have to release it. And that's what these end, 4 through 9. 8 and 9 are a lot about real manifest actions that can release our sense of guilt, our sense of shame, and our opening of our hearts to want to be in relationship. I was very, very isolated as an addict and as a emotionally imbalanced person when I first came in. And still now I have a tendency to isolate, or I have a tendency to make myself superior to others, i.e. a Zen teacher. What's more superior than that? So that I don't have to have real intimate relationships with people. So even that, what looked very wholesome to me was becoming a spiritual teacher. After a while, I realized, oh, there was some kind of professional shield that I then had between the intimacy of two human beings relating to each other. In the 12 and 12, it talks about here, very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persists below the level of consciousness. So I think if you're doing a good fourth step, if you're starting to work on amends, and also if you're meditating, if you're doing deep meditation, these forgotten, damaged emotional things will start to surface. And that's why they sometimes call it a honeymoon. A honeymoon in spiritual life can last for years, where you feel great and you're peaceful and all your disciplines are helping you. And then all of a sudden something will happen. You'll get divorced, or someone will get sick, or you'll get sick, or something will happen that will crack open your life, and then you'll see the shadow. This just happened to me kind of recently, 6 years ago. I was confronted, and a whole nother level of facade cracked open. And I had to do quite a bit of 12-step work and therapy and going to nonviolent communication. And I go every single day to Al-Anon. I did a lot of work in the last 6 years to understand, forgive, find love and acceptance in this new level of unconscious awareness that surfaced. And also, if you do meditation retreats, like go on longer retreats, definitely your unconscious material will surface, and hopefully you'll be working with a good enough teacher that can help you through handling the emotional intensity of that happening. And this, I'll just say a little bit about self-empowerment. Sometimes I feel when I'm willing to face the pain of my life really directly and straightforwardly, that gets digested and released or gets transformed. And then that's very empowering for me. So there is a pivot that happens when you do good 4 through 9. When you do good deep therapy, there is a pivot where what you understand about yourself becomes empowering. You're able to get through conflict. You're able to apologize. You're able to offer some new choices that you didn't think you had when you were in the mental state of being a victim. From the 12 and 12, instincts in collision will cause harm. So conflicts with people, I'm going to say something, maybe this is wrong, but I believe they're usually not one-sided. I think it's two people's troubles hitting each other. and then there's a conflict. I don't think it's one person is bad and the other person is great. I haven't found that to be true. And so what I'm learning, especially from nonviolent communication, which is a needs-based philosophy, that for me to understand what are my needs in the relationship, and for years, my needs were emotional safety. Now, not so much, because I worked it through, that I feel safe enough now that I can have conversations with people and I can get through conflicts. But it took me quite a while to get there because I did not, because of abuse in my past, I did not feel emotionally safe with anybody. So amends is a practice arena for learning how to have relationships between equals, and these equals have needs. So the person I hate, I just had this with someone. It was very interesting for me to spend a little time saying, what does that person need in this conflict? Why are they fighting? Because they need competency. Let's see, there were words that I had for what the other person needed. And there were words that I needed. And then when I went into the conflict with them, I was more calmed down. I was right sized. I could hear a little bit more what the other person needed. And when all the needs are set out on the table, there's a possibility that a new choice or a new solution will arise. And it's not just two, what is it, elk that lock horns and fight until they're deaf? We don't want to do that. That's icky. Who wants to fight until everyone's bloody? Even with my perpetrators. Well, you have to decide, do you owe an amend to them? And maybe you don't. But if you do, how do you do it without hating them? And I think that that's very mature. I don't think you do that right away. I don't suggest you do that right away. I mean, I'm talking about 40, 50 years of doing program and therapy and all these things. And now I feel like I might be strong enough to have dialogue, a true and heartfelt dialogue with people that I might hate or feel still very angry at. But you don't have to. Unless you did something really wrong, you don't have to make amends. That's for us Al-Anon people. You do not have to make amends if you didn't do anything wrong. And you have to work with your sponsor about that decision or your therapist. So one of the ways I know in Buddhism, a little bit close to this idea that I've been talking about, is in Tibetan Buddhism, they have a practice of exchanging oneself for the other. That seems really scary, especially to my ego, who thinks she's right and is going to fight for her justice, her sense of justice. It's very stubborn, doesn't like to forgive. I often say my ego, Judith Ragir, doesn't forgive people, but I am more than my ego. Yay! I finally figured that out spiritually, that there are higher consciousnesses in me. There's a lot of them that connect with the universal energy, that connect with the rhythm of yin and yang, that are scientific like gravity. There's a lot more going on in my life, in my story, than just what my ego wants and thinks she needs, and her anger and her resentments. So if I want to let go of my resentment, if I want to be able to make a good amend, I have to allow the bigger part of myself the conscious contact part of myself to intervene on my ego's scrappy nature. I'm going to talk a little bit more. Well, maybe I'll stop right now because forgiveness, we've worked on forgiveness, and this, I think the amends, spiritually speaking, are about the highest level of forgiveness. And what I mean by the highest level is when I'm in the manifest world, you know, the daily life world, the ego world, the world where I'm worried about money and health and safety and car payments and all that stuff. When I'm in that world and my ego she feels really strong in that world. She has a lot of opinions, some of them good and some of them hurtful, some of them self-destructive, some of them great. But that world has to be held by a larger world, the spiritual world, the higher consciousness. I'm hoping, and I know, I believe it to be true now, that though the higher consciousness that live in me hold my manifest self, hold my ego, soothe me. And that larger self is the one that absolutely can forgive, that understands that life is filled with suffering. Sometimes you cause it, sometimes you receive it. There's no escaping it. That's the first noble truth of dukkha. There's no escaping suffering. But if you let your higher self in, you can start making different choices. And one of them is to accept and forgive. And if you're having conscious contact with these higher parts of yourself, forgiving isn't that hard. You see it in a whole different light. You just don't see it through the eyes of the story. You see it through the eyes of the energy. You see it through the eyes of intergenerational trauma. You see it through the eyes of, my mom was doing the best she could and she had absolutely no tools. So am I going to hold resentment in my heart for the rest of my life to a woman who had no tools? I'm hurting myself if I do that. But if I see it from this larger viewpoint, I can see her life and even her beauty. My mother wasn't 100% a bad person. She certainly wasn't. I can begin to see people in a much larger, broader perspective, and then it's easier to make amends and it's easier to forgive. So restitution is very much in the manifest world. If you stolen money, how are you going to repair that? These are very concrete things. And sometimes you can do them directly, and sometimes you have to do them indirectly, because I forget which step it is, but you don't do it if it's going to cause harm for others. You don't do it if it's, you have to really work on this. I mean, some people need to do restitution, and they go to jail. Now, that's a very deep choice that some of our fellow 12-steppers make. And other people say, I'm not going to do that because I have a family to raise and to support. So those type of choices you have to be very conscious about, and you have to get a lot of help in making those type of choices when it would hurt the other party or more. Sometimes you can't find the person you need to make amends to, and sometimes they're dead. So a lot of people do a lot of different things because this is about psychological and spiritual change. it doesn't necessarily have to be directly, linearly about what happened. So, for example, well, this isn't a good example, but I'll just say I had a street rape at one point in my life, and if I were to help go to a hotline for rape, that would be a type of forgiving, of healing, of helping. If I don't know, I'm just pulling these out of my hat, but my mother loved to give to the Jewish Federation. So if I were trying to make amends to my mom, I might give a gift to that organization, which I normally would not do. So there are ways, indirectly and kind of energetically, that you make amends. Many, many people have gone to the gravesite and read their amends to the people who have died. So again, what I'd like to say is amends, they're best done if they're direct. They're best done if they're specific, but it is an energetic release that you're trying to get. Releasing yourself from the guilt of the past, letting go of the past, feeling clean. Like, I may have been a person who robbed stores. So how would I make restitution so that I would feel okay about who I am? And what do they say? To put the past to bed, not to annihilate it, not to completely forget it, but that it's put to bed. It's been resolved. It's been closed. I feel that a great deal about my life now. And that particularly happened because I wrote this book, which is my OA sponsor laughed at me and said, "Oh, you felt so bad that you had to do a public fourth and fifth step." And, I was so revealing in this book. But, I wrote the book, it got published. I went around the country giving talks. And since then, I have felt more free than I ever have. I have felt like my past has been digested and released, and I don't have to muck around in it very much anymore. Now, occasionally I get triggered. And when I do, I have to work on acceptance, understanding, forgiving. Do I need to speak with this person directly? How do I resolve my trigger? But that's more like a 10-step thing. It's not like I'm still holding deep, hurtful resentments from my childhood, my teenage years, my early marriage, my being a parent. I made a lot of mistakes when I was a parent. Even though I was in program and in therapy, I unconsciously made a lot of mistakes. And now I'm trying to repair them. So one amends I'm doing right now is my two sons have said that they felt abandoned by me when they were younger because I was a Zen teacher. How ironic is that? Because I was working so hard for other people's spirituality that my own children felt abandoned. And one of the amends I'm making, and I'm making it right now, is we're moving to LA. We're moving to be near our kids so that we are involved in their life at whatever boundary, they'll set the boundaries of privacy, but at whatever level they know that they're really, really, really important to me. And I want to die that my children know that they're really, really important to me. So I'm uprooting this house, selling this house, and we're moving to LA. And I'm happy about that. I think that'll be a great thing for my karma, for my narrative. Okay, how we doing time-wise? Oh, there it is. 1:15. I have till 1:30, I think. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's talk. I don't think you can do amends unless you know how to forgive yourself and other people. And forgiveness is the birthright of spirituality. It's one of the main things you get when you're able to connect with this larger sense of who you are. I'm speaking non-theistically. I'm not saying when you can connect with Jesus, although some of you might feel that way, but that's not my spirituality. My spirituality is that I have these higher consciousnesses in me, and I can connect with them if I let go of the bondage of self, if I let go of my ego's opinions and stubbornness and stories and clenched fists. If I can let that go, my higher consciousness is right there. And that consciousness is kind and gentle and loving and knows how to forgive. I think I've said all this. Oh, let me just talk about a field of forgiveness. I just felt that so much. I just took a 7-day meditation retreat with Philip Moffitt and the Nine Bodies, who is the Sangha that I'm with at the moment. And they did such a good job of getting the whole community into what they called the field of forgiveness, the field of kindness, which is different, higher, energetic than the manifest mundane life we lead. It holds the manifest narrative, but it's much larger and it's a field of love. And there's someone, an older woman in my Al-Anon group, and she says over and over, I want to come from the field of love. I don't want to come from the field of fear. And that's kind of a slogan for me now, that I want to come from the field of love. I don't want to come from the field of fear. And now I have this sense that there is a field of love which includes and which is able to and which is generous in forgiveness, forgiving. I just want to say something about victimhood, resentment, and defensiveness. I think I always felt like a victim because I had abusive family. I had no choices as a child. But pretty soon that victimhood thing gets old. It's particularly old by the time you're 72. It's like, knock it off already that your sorrow is because of everybody else. So I'm really trying to knock that off. And victimhood is how you start to resent people. And it's also about defending your ego, defending your opinions and your rights. And that's just a dead end, I think, spiritually speaking. And to use, when I feel those things, that is a kind of a waving of a mindfulness flag that there's work to be done right here. Pause, stop for a second, and figure out where the contraction is and how you can release it. So one thing that's happened to me as I've been giving these talks for Berlin's Friendly Circle is I'm realizing that the steps now are alive in me. They're not over and done. None of them, really. And I really felt this way about the amends. I did a lot, and maybe I can talk next time about all the different types of amends I've done over 47 years of being in program. But now what I feel very deeply is saying I'm sorry and using words and apologizing is very skin deep. And it needs to be done because people need to hear it for them. But what's really not skin deep is interrupting our habit patterns and not doing it again. And that's much harder. And that's everydayness. What am I working on? It's being very aware of your fourth step It's being very aware of the amends you've had to make. And it's a commitment or a vow that I hope I encourage myself to do things differently so I won't have to make amends every time I turn around, you know? And in the 10th step, if you do make a mistake, you need to turn it around quickly. You need to make an amends fast, if you can. Now, as soon as I said that, I thought, well, don't make it too fast. Make a mistake, pause, consider what's happening, maybe talk to someone, pray about it, and then make an amend. And this is where they start to merge. The 10th step is where you're tracking. You're tracking. How am I doing? Am I doing the same thing over again? Was I unkind today? Did I blow my stack? You know, I came from a rageful family. I can be very rageful. It comes out when I even don't even expect it. And I have to be aware of it. I have to soften that. I have to soften myself. And I have to figure out, is there some way I can repair that without hating myself? That's the bottom line for me. I have to learn, cultivate, embrace self-love and self-compassion. That's the bottom line of spirituality. And I can't work the steps unless that is my base. What I would like to do now is to meditate. I want to play a chant from Leanne Rhymes. It has forgiveness in it. It's very beautiful. It's only 6 minutes long, so I hope you can all meditate for 6 minutes. And you don't have to do anything. You can just listen. You can listen to the words. And if you don't like the music and the words, you can just you can contemplate what you heard from me, or you could just sit in the beauty of the present moment. think we can move into Q&A.